Well, I came to London because Margaret Thatcher invited me. And she invited me in order to ask me to give the first lecture and to give me an award. And Margaret Thatcher is someone that I admire a great deal, so I didn't want to turn that opportunity. Then it also gave me a chance to do some fundraising here among Americans and to build our base among Americans, living outside the United States, who nowadays can be important in elections. And it gave me a chance to visit with the Prime Minister and the former Prime Minister and the Foreign Minister, other people. And
Margaret Thatcher, is that a woman you wouldn't say no to? I mean, what does she mean to you?
Well, Margaret Thatcher is one of the three people that I think was primarily responsible for the kind of freedom that we now see in Eastern Europe, along with Ronald Reagan and Pope John. I think her support for freedom, for democracy, was enormously important to liberating so many people all over the world. And second, her domestic reforms are still a model. Ronald Reagan used them in America. I used them in New York City when I became mayor of New York City. And I see that Nicolas Sarkozy is using them now in France. So, I mean, she's very much a part of a kind of vision for a free society, a free market economy, moving away from some of the vestiges of socialism and releasing the human spirit. To me, she's one of the great figures of the 20th century.
Probably there's been a bit of an argument over her over here, really. She's traditionally been a hero of the right, but now she's having tea with Gordon Brown. Do you think she is a figure from the right?
I think she's a figure for your entire country, the way Ronald Reagan has become for our country. Ronald Reagan is now seen as one of our most effective presidents, one of the most effective presidents of the United States. At the time, he was seen as maybe more right-wing and only in one capacity, but I think people realized the kinds of contributions that Margaret Thatcher made. She did for England, I believe, what Sarkozy is now trying to do for France, except she did it for you 30 years ago, which I think has redounded greatly to the benefit of the United Kingdom.
I mean, you're a Republican, yet you've also been to see Tony Blair and Gordon Brown. Why is that?
Well, I think they're both very effective leaders. I have tremendous admiration for Tony Blair. I told him today when I saw him, I've told him this many times, he deserves a chapter in Profiles in Courage. I mean, he's a man who really has a very, very strong belief in the value of the rule of law, democracy, how it has to be defended and protected. Sure, there may be some disagreements on domestic issues. There always are among people. But I think by and large, he did a lot to increase and expand the special relationship that the United States has with the United Kingdom. I mean, it started with Churchill and Roosevelt, and then Thatcher and Reagan, but then Tony Blair and Bill Clinton, Tony Blair and George Bush created a very, very strong special relationship with the United States, which is very important to us on the American side.
I mean, a little over a year's time, you could be president, effectively, and you could be dealing with Prime Minister Gordon Brown. Now, there is an assumption here that one way or another there won't be a repeat of that close friendship between Prime Minister and President that we saw with Blair and Bush. Would you want to be that sort of friend with?
Sure. I think the President of the United States and the Prime Minister of Great Britain should be friends. Our countries are friends. Why shouldn't the two people holding those offices be friends? And we've been able to do that whether it's a Republican president or a Democratic president, a Labor or a conservative Prime Minister. You look at the history of it, it spanned those political parties. It's deeper than the political parties. It's two countries that speak the same language, share very much the same legal system, have roughly the same ideas about how to deal with the world and how to deal with people. There's no reason why the leaders of those countries shouldn't be very close to people are.
Will that be possible even if the British cut and run and American troops are still out there in Iraq?
Well, I think in any relationship like this special relationship we have, or even America's relationship with Europe, there are going to be disagreements. We shouldn't get, I've said this many times, I said it in my many meetings, we shouldn't get overly upset about disagreements that occur. The nature of the relationship is so strong. It was created by our forebears, and it's our responsibility to make sure we maintain it for our successes. And if we have some disagreements, fine, we'll work them out.
Like many people, your attitude towards what's going on in Iraq has evolved. Do you feel now that both the British and the American forces should stay here stay in Iraq at least until the other side of the U.S. election?
Well, I think the goal in Iraq should not be tied to the American election. It shouldn't be tied to a lack of patience or frustration. Or the goal in Iraq should be an Iraq that is stable and an Iraq that will help us in the terrorist war against us, that'll be an ally of the forces of freedom and democracy. And that's always been the goal in Iraq. It should remain the goal. We shouldn't allow frustration to kind of drive us out.
Do you think that, I mean, you've become a bit of a target of MoveOn.org, I think, in the United States, who, of course, talked about general betrayers. Do you think there is perhaps, because of the problems in Iraq, a dangerous mood really sweeping a lot of public opinion on both sides of the Atlantic now?
Well, I think the ad hominem, personal attacks are outrageous. I think what MoveOn.org did to General Petraeus was one of the worst things I've ever seen done in attacking him and calling him General Betray Us. And MoveOn.org, though, is a character assassination machine. I mean, they spent hundreds of millions of dollars trying to assail people's character. And if they want to attack me, I kind of invite it, because it could get me the Republican nomination if they continue to do it. Because I think Republicans realize, probably more than others, just exactly the nature of MoveOn.org, since they've targeted so many Republicans and spent hundreds of millions of dollars doing personal attacks on them.
I suppose what I was driving at is where you would place now, in your opinion, the level of al-Qaeda terrorist threat on cities.
I think the level of threat is obvious. I mean, all you have to do is look at what happened recently in Germany, the arrest there, what happened to you.
As high as it was in 2001?
I can't tell you whether the level of threat is as high as it was in 2001. Our ability to intercept the threats has improved. And our ability to deal with the aftermath of the threats has probably improved since September 11. And on the American side, we've been safe since then. We don't expect that it's going to remain that way. We keep assuming we're going to be attacked again and try to get ready for it. But we have to be thankful for the fact that being on offense against terrorism has brought us a certain amount of safety that we didn't have before.
Do you go over in your mind sometimes and think there are things I should have done before September the 11th which should have stopped it?
Sure, absolutely. I mean, in advance, having thought of it, sure, absolutely. You keep thinking of, if you had thought of this in advance, what you would have done, or how you would have prepared people, or how you would have prepared your services. The only thing you can do with that is you try to put it into future planning. I learned, because I've handled so many emergencies, that every emergency has a combination of things that go right and things that go wrong. And then the things that go wrong, you try to improve for the next time. I was here on July 7 of 2005, a half a block away from where the first bomb went off. And, that reminded me, even with the very, very best intelligence services in the world, which you have in the UK, we can't anticipate everything. We can't stop everything. Your emergency response here in the UK to that, however, was first rate. It was terrific, and I think that helps deter it also.
Two final questions. How confident are you that you will get the Republican nomination?
Right now I'm ahead, but right now is not the primary dates. I'm confident. I'm generally a confident person. I'm generally an optimistic person, but the voters decide. I don't decide. I just do the best that I can to get them to decide. Right now we have a lead. In some cases, in some states, we have a very comfortable lead, but that all has to be converted into votes, and that's still 4 or 5 months away.
And if it's you against Senator Clinton, what have you got that she hasn't?
A lot more experience. On the Democratic side, they have 3 candidates, including Senator Clinton, who have never run a city, never run a state, never run a business, never had any executive experience. I've run a city that was the size of a state. I've run businesses. I've had results. And I ran cities, even businesses, that were in crisis and had to be turned around. So I have results that people can look to that had a lot to do with creating safety and security for people. When I took over as mayor of New York City, I had what was regarded as the crime capital of America. Within a few years, I turned it into the safest large city in the country, one of the safest cities in the country. So I've had a great deal of experience dealing with safety and security, which is something that you have to do now in this era of terrorism.